That's how she learns to behave. Those words made my blood run cold. 3 years have passed since that scene, and I can still hear the echo of that applause, the applause of a mother watching her son hit my daughter. My name is Audrey Vance. I am 57 years old. I am a family lawyer, specializing in domestic violence cases. I have spent 32 years defending women who couldn't defend themselves. I have faced corrupt judges, violent husbands, and entire families who protected the abuser. But nothing in my career prepared me to see my own daughter being struck right in front of me. This is the story I never thought I would have to tell. The story of how one Sunday dinner destroyed a family, and how 30 seconds of silence changed the destiny of 4 people forever. Because you see, they didn't know who they were messing with. Let me take you back to that night. It was Sunday, March the 20th. I remember the exact date, because it was my late husband, Robert's, birthday. He had died 2 years earlier of a massive heart attack, leaving me alone in that big house in Georgetown, Washington, D.C., which used to be filled with laughter. Adrienne, my only daughter, had insisted that I come to her place for dinner. "Mum, you can't be alone on Dad's birthday. Come on over. I'll make his favorite dish. Turkey with mashed potatoes and gravy. My daughter, my Adrienne, 32 years old, a chemical engineer, a brilliant mind who had inherited her father's intelligence and my tenacity, or so I thought. I arrived at 7 in the evening at her house in Beverly Hills, Los Angeles, a gorgeous residence they had bought just 1 year prior with the money Robert had left us. I had given her her full share of the inheritance, against my accountant's advice. "Ms. Vance, shouldn't you put it in a trust, just in case?" "Just in case of what?" I had asked, annoyed. "Just in case my daughter married a man who turned out to be a monster?" I should have listened to him. When I arrived, the table was already set. Fine china, crystal glasses, scented candles. Adrienne had been cooking for hours. I could smell it. The turkey, the mashed potatoes, the green bean casserole. The aroma immediately transported me back to our kitchen in Georgetown, to Robert sampling the gravy straight from the pot, to little Adrienne sneaking bits of candied yams. But something was different. Adrienne was different. Her hair was shorter than usual, almost shoulder length. She wore a long-sleeved blouse despite the March heat, and when she hugged me, I felt how tense she was, as if every muscle in her body was on alert. "Honey, are you all right?" "Sure, Mom. Just tired from work." I should have insisted. I should have asked more questions. But her husband was right there, Michael, smiling that smile that I had always found too perfect, too rehearsed. "Mother-in-law, great to see you. Come in, come in." And behind him, like a dark shadow, was his mother, Helen, 64 years old, a widow as well, but of a different kind of widowhood. Her husband had died 10 years earlier under circumstances that were never entirely clear. An accident on the stairs of their home. A fatal fall. The investigation closed quickly. With my 3 decades of experience in family cases, I had sensed something strange since the day I met her at the wedding. But Adrienne was so in love, so happy, that I kept my suspicions to myself. Another mistake that haunts me every night. "Audrey, dear, what a joy to have you here," Helen said, with that saccharine voice she always used. "Adrienne prepared a delicious dinner. My son is lucky to have such a devoted wife." A devoted wife. Those words. As if Adrienne were a servant who had to earn her place in that house. In the house that she herself had paid for with her inheritance. We sat down at the table, Michael at the head, of course, Helen to his right, me across from her, and Adrienne. Adrienne caught between her husband and her mother-in-law, trapped between 2 walls. The dinner started quietly, too quiet. Helen talked and talked about her new decorating project, about her friends from the country club, about how wonderful it was to have her son so close now that he lived in the same neighborhood. I ate in silence, observing. I watched as Adrienne served the food with trembling hands. I watched as Michael didn't even say thank you. I watched as Helen subtly criticized every dish. The mashed potatoes are a little salty, don't you think, son? The biscuits are kind of cold. Back in my day, wives got up earlier to have everything perfect. And I watched as my daughter, my brilliant, strong, independent daughter, shrank with every word. Then it happened. Adrienne was pouring more water into Michael's glass when her hand trembled just a little. Barely a drop fell onto the white tablecloth. The silence that followed was deafening. Michael slowly put his fork down on the plate. The sound of metal against the porcelain echoed like a gunshot in that dining room. "Do you see what you did?" he said, his voice dangerously calm. My daughter opened her mouth to apologize, but he didn't give her time. What happened next occurred in slow motion, yet it was so fast I could barely process it. Michael rose from his chair and slapped my daughter, once, twice, 3 times. The sound of his hand against Adrienne's face filled the dining room. My daughter fell from her chair, hitting the marble floor. And then I heard the applause. Helen was clapping. "That's how she learns to behave," she said with a satisfied smile. "A clumsy wife needs correction. I had to educate my husband this way too. It's for her own good." My blood ran cold. For 30 seconds I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. 32 years defending women victims of violence, and I couldn't react when it happened before my eyes. But those 30 seconds were not paralysis. They were calculation, because in my head, I began to process everything I was seeing with the coldness of a lawyer who had seen this hundreds of times. The power of control, the forced submission, the normalized violence, the complicit family, and something more. I saw the glass of water with the slight condensation tremor on the table, the single drop that had fallen, the way Michael had reacted disproportionately. This was not the first time. I rose from my chair slowly without saying a word. Michael was looking at me with that arrogant smile, expecting me to scream, to make a scene, to become hysterical as he probably expected emotional women to do. But I didn't scream. I pulled my phone from my purse. My hands didn't tremble, not once, and I dialed a number I had on speed dial for 20 years. "Commander Vance," I said with a voice so cold that even I was surprised. "This is Audrey Vance. I need an immediate response unit at Park Avenue 345, apartment 802, domestic violence in progress, with witnesses. I am activating my phone's recording now." And I did it. I activated the recorder. I put the phone on speakerphone on the table and looked directly into Michael's eyes. "Repeat what you just did," I said. "Repeat what your mother just said. Please, I have all night." Michael's face changed color, from arrogant red to ghostly white in 3 seconds. You can't." "I am a lawyer specializing in gender violence for 32 years, I said in the same cold voice. "I have prosecuted 218 men like you. I have direct contact with the specialized district attorney's office, and you just hit my daughter in front of me, in front of your mother, who applauded and justified your violence, making her a legal accomplice." I walked over to Adrienne, who was on the floor, her face reddened and silent tears running down her cheeks. I helped her up carefully, checking for any serious injury. "Mom," she whispered. "Silence, my love. I'm talking now." Michael took a step toward me, but I raised a hand. "If you touch me, that's 3 more felonies: threatening, attempted battery against a key witness, and obstruction of justice." Do you want to keep adding years? Helen, for the first time all night, had stopped smiling. This is a family matter, she said, her voice trembling. You have no right to. I have every right in the world. I am a direct witness to a crime punishable by 3 to 6 years in prison, according to Article 201 of the Penal Code. And you, ma'am, as an active accomplice who justified and celebrated the violence, could face up to 4 additional years. Just then, we heard the sirens. Half an hour. I had told them they had half an hour to get there, but I had known Commander Vance for 2 decades. He knew that when I called, it was serious. They had arrived in 17 minutes. 3 patrol cars parked in front of the building. 6 officers came up to the apartment. Commander Vance walked in first, with that imposing presence I had learned to respect over hundreds of cases. Attorney Vance, he greeted me formally. Then he saw Adrienne, her face marked, still trembling. His expression hardened. We have flagrant offence, I told him. 3 blows, direct witness, partial recording on my phone, and accomplice present. The commander nodded and looked at Michael. Sir, you have the right to remain silent. What followed was pure protocol. Michael was arrested. Helen, too, as an accomplice. They were both handcuffed and taken to the patrol car. Before leaving, Michael looked at me with a hatred I will never forget. This isn't over, he said. My family has connections. We're going to. Your connections are worth nothing when there's solid evidence and witnesses, I interrupted him. And if you try to intimidate me or approach my daughter, I will personally make sure you spend every day of your sentence in the farthest prison from New York City. They took him away. And for the first time all night, I hugged my daughter. She cried in my arms for what seemed like an eternity. She cried years of silence, of fear, of feeling trapped in a nightmare she didn't know how to end. Why didn't you tell me? I asked her when she could finally speak. I was ashamed, Mum. You've always been so strong, always defending other women. How could I tell you that I myself was a victim? How could I accept that I married a man who turned out to be exactly the kind of monster you fight? I hugged her tighter. That ends today. And it did. But this story doesn't end with the arrest. This story is just beginning, because what Michael and Helen didn't know was that the universe has a very particular way of serving justice. And I was going to make sure that every one of their actions had its consequence. Sometimes we trust the wrong people too much. Have you also been disappointed by someone you loved? Tell me your story in the comments. I want to read them. Before I tell you what happened after that night, I need you to understand something important. I need you to know who Adrienne was before Michael. Because when you see a woman destroyed by violence, it is easy to forget that she was once a little girl who laughed without fear, that she was a teenager full of dreams, that she was a woman who walked through life with her head held high. Adrienne was born on July the 23rd, in the middle of summer. Robert and I had been married for just 2 years when she arrived, filling our Georgetown home with a cry that, at the time, seemed like the most beautiful sound in the world. My husband was an architect, a noble man, one of those who are rare these days. He never raised his voice, never raised his hand. When we had disagreements, we would sit in the living room with hot apple cider and talk until we found middle ground. That's how we grew up, and that's how Adrienne grew up. Our daughter was curious from an early age. I remember when she was just 4 years old, she took apart the house phone because she wanted to see how the voices spoke inside. Robert laughed for half an hour when he found the pieces scattered throughout the living room. This girl is going to be a scientist, he told me as we picked up screws from the floor. And he was right. Adrienne was always brilliant. Not just intelligent, but with that special spark of wanting to understand how everything worked. Plants, machines, chemical reactions, people. When she was 12 years old, she won her first science fair with a project on water purification. I remember her face when they gave her first place, a mixture of pride and that genuine humility she never lost. "Mummy, do you think Daddy is proud?" "Your father has always been proud of you, my love, since the day you were born." Robert was there, in the audience, his eyes bright with suppressed tears. That night, the three of us went out to dinner at Adrienne's favorite restaurant, a small place in Brooklyn that made the best buffalo wings in the whole borough. "To our scientist," Robert toasted, raising his glass of iced tea. "To our family," I said. "To being together," Adrienne added with that smile that lit up any room. Together. That word was like an anchor for us. We didn't have much money in those years. Robert's career was just taking off, and I was still building my reputation as a lawyer. But we had something more valuable. We had each other. Sundays were sacred in our house. Robert cooked barbecue ribs. It was his specialty, a recipe he had inherited from his grandmother in Texas. He spent hours mixing spices, adjusting the sweetness of the molasses with the heat of the chipotle peppers. Adrienne and I were his official assistants. She measured the ingredients with scientific precision. I told the family stories that my husband loved to hear. "Did I tell you about Mrs. Smith's case?" I would ask while chopping onions. "Mom, you've told us that case like 20 times," Adrienne would laugh. "But this time I have new details." And that's how we spent our afternoons. Amidst laughter, simmering barbecue sauce, and the smell of the cornbread that Robert insisted on making from scratch because the box kind just wasn't the same. Those Sundays. How I miss those Sundays. Adrienne grew up fast. Too fast. As all children do when you're not paying attention. Suddenly she was 15 years old, then 18, then she was starting college. She studied chemical engineering at MIT. She was always at the top of her class. Not because she was an obsessive perfectionist, but because she genuinely loved what she did. She would come home excited, talking about exothermic reactions, mass balances, industrial processes that I could barely understand. "Mummy, did you know we can convert organic waste into clean energy? It's fascinating." Robert and I listened to her, captivated, proud to have a daughter so passionate about changing the world. When she graduated with honors at 24, Robert cried throughout the entire ceremony. He didn't bother to hide the tears. He was too happy, too proud. "That's my daughter," he would tell anyone sitting nearby. "That's my Adrienne." After the graduation, we took a picture, all three of us together. That photograph is now framed in my living room. Adrienne in the middle, holding her diploma, with Robert and me on either side, hugging her. We are all smiling. We didn't know that would be one of the last complete photos we would have as a family. Adrienne got a job immediately at a major pharmaceutical company. She was a researcher, developing new processes for more accessible generic medications. Her dream had always been to do science that helped people. "I don't want to work just for money, Mum. I want my job to mean something." And it did. In 2 years, she was a project leader. She published 3 articles in international scientific journals. She traveled to conferences in Europe and the United States. She was independent, successful, happy. She lived alone in a small but cozy apartment in Boston's South End. On weekends, she would go running in the Boston Common, go out with her college friends, visit museum exhibits, and every Sunday without fail, she would come home for Dad's barbecue ribs. That was our untouchable tradition. Until she met Michael. It was at an industrial engineering conference 5 years ago. He worked at a consulting firm, presenting a project on process optimization. Adrienne was there as a representative of her pharmaceutical company. "Mummy, I met someone," she told me that afternoon on the phone, with an excitement in her voice I hadn't heard before. My heart skipped a beat, not from joy, but from that premonition every mother has when her daughter is growing up, when she is about to share her life with someone else. "Tell me about him." "His name is Michael. He's an industrial engineer. He's smart, funny, and he has incredible eyes. We talked for 3 hours after the conference. 3 hours, Mum. I didn't even notice the time. I wanted to be happy. I wanted to feel that pure joy a mother should feel when her daughter falls in love for the first time. But something stirred inside me, a silent alarm that I didn't know how to interpret at that moment. "When do we get to meet him?" "Soon. Very soon. I want you and Dad to meet him." 3 weeks later, Michael came to dinner at our house. He arrived on time, with an expensive bottle of wine and flowers for me. Well-dressed, well-groomed, with that perfect smile I mentioned before. Too perfect. "Mrs. Vance, it's an honor to meet you. Adrienne has told me so much about you and your work. I deeply admire what you do for women victims of violence." The right words, the right tone, the right posture. Robert shook his hand. They talked about architecture and engineering, projects and professional prospects. My husband seemed comfortable with him, but I watched him. I watched how he subtly interrupted Adrienne when she spoke. I watched how his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. I watched how, when Adrienne mentioned a recent professional achievement, he quickly changed the subject to his own successes. Small details, insignificant to any normal person. But I had spent 30 years seeing patterns, and I recognized the red flags. That night, after Michael and Adrienne left, Robert found me in the kitchen, washing dishes in silence. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" he asked, knowing my silence better than anyone. "I don't know. Something doesn't add up." "Give it time. It's the first time you've seen Adrienne in love. It's natural to worry." Maybe he was right. Maybe I was projecting my work cases onto my personal life. Maybe I was being overprotective. But my instinct was screaming. The months followed. Adrienne and Michael became inseparable. She started talking less about her job and more about him. She stopped going to the gym because Michael preferred they spend that time together. She stopped going out with her friends on Fridays because he wanted them to have their special night. "Mummy, I'm happy, really happy." God knows I wanted to believe her. Then we met Helen. It was 6 months later at a family lunch Michael organized. His mother had just moved to Los Angeles from Chicago, he told us, to be closer to her son. "He's all I have since my husband died," she explained, with that saccharine voice I later learned to detest. Helen was unlike anyone I had ever met. Elegant in appearance, but with an energy that took up all the space. She talked non-stop, always steering the conversation toward Michael, toward how wonderful he was, toward how much she had suffered raising him alone after her husband's death. "It was a terrible accident," she said with dramatically moist eyes. "He fell down the stairs. I never got over the loss." But her body language did not match her words. There was no real grief in her expression, just performance. And the way she looked at Adrienne, like evaluating, like measuring, like deciding if my daughter was good enough for her son. After that lunch, Robert and I talked until dawn. "That woman gives me bad vibes," I said. "Me too." "But Audrey, Adrienne is an adult. We can't—" I know. But something is wrong. I can feel it." Robert hugged me that night, as he had done thousands of times in our marriage. "If something is wrong, Adrienne will see it. We raised her to be smart, to be strong. Let's trust her." And I trusted her. That was my mistake. 1 year later, Michael proposed to Adrienne, an elaborate proposal in Napa Valley with rose petals and violinists. She said yes, crying with happiness. When she told us, I hugged my daughter and told her I was happy for her. And part of me was. The other part, the experienced lawyer, screamed in silence. The wedding was beautiful, 200 guests in a garden in Palm Springs. Adrienne was radiant in her white dress, like all brides. Robert walked her down the aisle. I remember he looked at me before giving her away, and in his eyes I saw the same concern I felt. But it was too late. We had already said yes. We had already given our blessing. The first months of marriage seemed normal. Adrienne still came home on Sundays, though now with Michael. We still made barbecue ribs, though the conversations no longer flowed with the same naturalness. Michael always had an opinion about everything. He always corrected some detail in Adrienne's stories. He always diverted attention back to himself. And Adrienne started talking less. Then Robert died. It was sudden, a massive heart attack while he slept. He left peacefully, without pain. But he left too soon, 62 years old. We still had so many years ahead, so many more Sundays of barbecue ribs, so many stories to create, so many grandchildren to meet. But he was gone, and with him, the balance of our family was gone. The funeral was a whirlwind of grief. Adrienne cried in my arms like she hadn't since she was a child. Michael was there, correct and appropriate, but distant, as if fulfilling a social duty rather than comforting his wife. Helen, for her part, spent the entire funeral comparing Robert's death to the death of her own husband. I know exactly how you feel, Audrey. I lost the love of my life too, although I must say my loss was more traumatic because it was violent. Even in my pain, I recognized the manipulation, but I was too broken to confront her. The weeks after the funeral were the darkest of my life. The Georgetown house felt empty, filled with ghosts of a life that no longer existed. Robert's coffee mug still on the kitchen counter, his bathrobe hanging in the bathroom, his architecture books in the study. Adrienne came every day. She stayed with me. She prepared food that I couldn't eat. She forced me to shower, to get out of bed. "Mom, you have to keep going. Dad would want you to keep going." And she was right. But going on without Robert was like breathing without air. It was during those months that Michael began to change, or maybe he didn't change, but rather showed who he had always been. He started suggesting that Adrienne shouldn't visit me so much. "Your mother is fine. She needs to learn to be independent." He started criticizing her work, her clothes, her hours. "Why are you getting home so late from the office? What are you really doing?" And Adrienne, devastated by her father's loss, vulnerable and seeking stability, began to give in. She stopped coming as often. She stopped telling me so much. She stopped being the woman she had been. I noticed it in the phone calls, in how her voice had lost its sparkle, in how she always spoke in whispers, as if someone were listening. "Honey, are you all right?" "Yes, Mum. Just tired from work." The same answer, over and over. And I, consumed by my own grief, didn't insist enough. Another mistake I carry. 6 months after Robert's death, the inheritance arrived. Robert had been a successful architect. He had invested well. He had saved, thinking of our future. He left Adrienne and me a considerable amount. I gave Adrienne her complete half, without restrictions, almost $6 million. "Mom, this is too much. You should keep more." "No, my love. Your father wanted you to have security. He wanted you to be able to follow your dreams without financial worries." With that money, Adrienne and Michael bought the house in Beverly Hills, a beautiful residence that should have been a home filled with love, but it became a prison. Visits became more spaced out. Adrienne always had an excuse: work, remodeling, commitments with Michael's family. When I saw her, I noticed subtle changes: shorter hair, more conservative clothes, heavier makeup. "Mum, I like this new style." But in her eyes, there was something I had never seen before: fear. And I, blinded by my own pain, by my own grief, didn't recognize it until that night. That darn night of March the 20th, the night that changed everything. The night I finally opened my eyes and saw what had been happening right under my nose for 2 years. My daughter was not okay. My daughter hadn't been okay for a long time, and I had been too lost in my own sadness to realize it. But that night, when I saw those 3 blows, when I heard that applause, when I felt my blood run cold, that night I recovered my purpose. That night I remembered who I was. Audrey Vance, lawyer, fighter, mother. And no one, absolutely no one, was going to touch my daughter without consequences. As I tell all this, I think about where you might be listening. Write the name of your city in the comments. The first fracture was not a blow. It was something much more subtle, much more dangerous. It was a word. Let me explain. After that night of March the 20th, when Michael and Helen were arrested, Adrienne stayed with me at the Georgetown house. I didn't want her to return to that Beverly Hills residence. Not that night. I needed to have her close, to make sure she was safe. I took her to her old room, the one we had kept exactly as she had left it when she moved out. Her twin bed with the sky blue quilt she herself had chosen at 15. Her diplomas and awards still hanging on the wall. The photograph of her with Robert at her graduation on the desk. "Mum, it's been so long since I slept here," she said, in a voice so small it broke my heart. I helped her change. I gave her a clean pair of my pajamas. I made her chamomile tea with honey, just like I did when she was a little girl and couldn't sleep. We sat on her bed, just like so many nights of her childhood. "Tell me everything," I said softly. "From the beginning. I need to know when it started." Adrienne remained silent for a long time. She stared at her teacup, watching the steam rise in delicate spirals. Finally, she spoke. "Remember our honeymoon in Greece?" Of course I remembered. It had been 3 years ago. Adrienne returned with hundreds of photographs. The impossibly blue sea of Santorini, the ruins of Athens, the sunsets in Mykonos. In all the photos, she was smiling. She looked radiant. She looked happy. "On the last night in Santorini," Adrienne continued, "we were having dinner at that restaurant overlooking the sea. Remember I sent you that picture?" I nodded. I remembered it perfectly. Adrienne in a white dress, the sun setting behind her, her wide, genuine smile. We had been drinking wine. We were celebrating. A waiter came up to our table. A young Greek guy, very kind. He asked me in English if everything was okay with the food. I told him yes, that everything was delicious. We talked for maybe 30 seconds. Adrienne took a sip of her tea. Her hands trembled slightly. When the waiter left, Michael went silent. I thought he was enjoying the view, the moment. But when I looked at him, he had that expression I later learned to fear. What expression? Cold, distant, as if I were suddenly a stranger. What happened? We finished dinner in silence. We returned to the hotel. I thought he would get over it, that maybe it was the wine or the travel exhaustion. But when we got to the room, he closed the door and looked me straight in the eyes. Adrienne paused. She took a deep breath. I continued waiting, giving her the space she needed. He called me a flirt. That single word. But the way Adrienne pronounced it, with that weight, with that contained pain, made me understand that it hadn't just been one word. It had been a sentence. I asked him what he meant. He said he had seen how I smiled at the waiter, how I unnecessarily prolonged the conversation, how I was clearly seeking his attention. Adrienne, I told him he was crazy, that I had just been polite. That's how I was with everyone. And then he laughed. He laughed, Mum, but it wasn't a normal laugh. It was a condescending laugh, as if I were a silly girl who didn't understand the world. What did he say to you? He said, maybe I didn't realize what I was doing, that maybe I was so naturally flirtatious that I didn't even notice it, that his mother had warned him that overly independent women like me sometimes didn't know how to behave appropriately in a marriage. I felt the rage rising in my throat, but I contained it. I needed to hear everything. I spent the rest of the night apologizing, Mum, apologizing for something I hadn't done, because he made me feel that maybe I had done something wrong without realizing it, that maybe I had been inappropriate, that maybe I needed to be more conscious of how my actions could be misinterpreted. That was the first fracture. I didn't realize it at the time. I thought it was a misunderstanding. I thought he was being sensitive because it was our honeymoon and he wanted everything to be perfect. Adrienne wiped away a tear that had begun to fall. But the next day, at the airport on the way back, he bought me flowers, red roses. He hugged me and told me he was sorry, that he had overreacted, that it was because he loved me so much that the idea of losing me made him irrational. The classic cycle. Explosion, honeymoon phase, tense calm, explosion. I had seen it hundreds of times in my cases, and now I was seeing it in my own daughter. When was the next time? 2 months later. We went to a work event for my company. It was a celebration. We had closed a major contract. My boss, Dr. Peterson, congratulated me publicly. He hugged me. A professional, appropriate hug. One of those you give in work contexts. Michael yelled at you. That night he yelled at me for the first time. He said I had humiliated him, that everyone at that party had seen how I allowed my boss to touch me, that I clearly had no respect for our marriage. I explained that he was my boss, that it had been a professional hug, that there were 50 other people there. But he wouldn't listen. He kept screaming. He called me naive. He called me stupid. He said my boss obviously wanted something more, and that I was too dumb to realize it. Adrienne leaned back against the headboard of her bed, exhausted from recounting memories she had clearly been bottling up for a long time. I started to be afraid to go out, afraid to talk to co-workers, afraid to smile too much, afraid to wear clothes that he considered provocative. I started constantly measuring myself. Is this blouse appropriate? Is this conversation innocent? Could this smile be misinterpreted? Honey, that is psychological violence. It's control. I know, Mum. I know it now. But at the time, I just wanted things to go back to the beginning, when he was charming, when he made me feel special. I kept thinking that if I behaved correctly, if I was the perfect wife, he would go back to being the man I fell in love with. I recognized my own failure at that moment. All the times Adrienne had cancelled plans with me, all the times she had stopped coming on Sundays, all the times her voice sounded muted on the phone. I had thought it was grief over Robert, that it was the natural adjustment of marriage, that it was busy adult life, but it had been this: systematic isolation, gradual control, invisible violence. When did the hitting start? I asked, although part of me didn't want to know the answer. Adrienne closed her eyes. 8 months ago, a few days after we bought the house. the house she had bought with her father's money, the money Robert had left so she would have security, freedom, options. The irony was cruel. I was excited about the house. I wanted to decorate it, make it ours. I hired an interior designer, a very talented young man recommended by a friend. His name was Sean. I already knew where the story was going. Sean came often, taking measurements, showing me options for colours, for furniture. He was professional, always, but Michael didn't like it. He said he spent too much time at our house, that he clearly had intentions. I told him he was gay, Mum. Sean was openly gay. He was engaged to his partner. I showed him his Instagram profile, where he was clearly seen with his fiancée. But Michael didn't care. He said he could be bisexual, that he could be lying, that I was too trusting. He forbade me from continuing to work with Sean. I had to fire him, invent an excuse. Sean felt awful. He thought he had done something inappropriate. I had to lie to him. And that's when we had the worst argument until then, I told him he was being irrational, that he had no right to control who I worked with, that it was my house too, bought with my money. Adrienne opened her eyes. They were red, swollen. He shoved me against the wall. He didn't hit me, not with a closed fist, but he shoved me so hard that I hit my head against the drywall. I saw stars for a few seconds. I felt nauseous. He apologized immediately. He cried. He said he didn't know what came over him, that I had provoked him by mentioning my money when we were supposed to be a team, that he was under a lot of stress at work, that his mother was sick and he was worried. Adrienne, he bought my forgiveness, Mum. Literally. The next day he came home with a diamond necklace. He took me out to dinner at the most expensive restaurant in the city. He told me he was going to change, that he was going to therapy, that he loved me more than anything in the world. Did he go to therapy? He went to 2 sessions. Then he said the therapist didn't understand him, that the therapist was taking the women's side and that it wasn't fair. Of course not. Abusers never accept responsibility. They always find excuses. They always blame others. They always play the victim. The following months were a roller coaster. Some weeks he was the perfect man. He brought me flowers. He wrote me sweet messages. He treated me like a queen. Other weeks he was a stranger, cold, critical, controlling. And Helen, I said. Where was Helen in all this? Adrienne's face hardened. Helen made everything worse, Mum. She moved closer to us 6 months ago. She bought an apartment 3 blocks from our house. 3 blocks. 3 blocks. And she started coming over every day. Every single day, Mum. Sometimes without calling ahead. She would come in with her keys because Michael had given her a set, and walk in as if it were her own house. One day I got home from work and found her reorganizing my kitchen, moving my things, throwing away spices that she claimed were no longer good, changing the placement of the dishes. I told her with all the politeness possible that I appreciated her help, but I preferred to organize my own kitchen. Do you know what she answered? I shook my head. She told me, a good wife accepts her mother-in-law's advice. I raised Michael alone, working double shifts, sacrificing everything for him. The least you can do is let me help you be the wife he deserves. The wife he deserves, I repeated bitterly. Helen had an opinion about everything, about my clothes. That skirt is too short. What will people think? About my job. You should consider cutting back on hours. Men need their wives to be available. About my cooking. My son's barbecue ribs are too salty. Clearly you don't know the correct recipe. And Michael? Michael always defended her. Always. No matter how unreasonable she was, he took her side. He told me his mother had suffered a lot. that she had raised a son alone, that I needed to be more understanding. I started to feel like a stranger in my own house, as if I were living in their house, not mine, as if I were a guest who had to earn the right to be there. Adrienne got up from the bed. She walked toward the window of her old room. She looked outside, toward the garden where Robert used to grow herbs for cooking. "Do you know what the worst part is, Mum?" "What?" "That Helen talked about her marriage as if it were a role model. She told me how she educated her husband, how she put him in his place when he behaved badly, how she taught him that she was the one who ruled the house. I always thought those stories were strange. She talked about hitting him with objects when he got drunk, hiding his money when he misbehaved, punishing him by locking him out of the house at night." A shiver ran down my spine. And when she told me these stories, she laughed. "Mum," she laughed, as if they were funny anecdotes about marriage, not abuse. Do you think she killed her husband?" "I don't know. But every time she mentions it, there's something in her eyes, something cold, something that scares me." Adrienne returned to the bed, snuggling up next to me like when she was a little girl and had nightmares. The first real blow, the first with a closed fist, was 4 months ago. I waited. It was something so stupid, so ridiculously stupid that I'm embarrassed to tell it. Tell me anyway. I was cooking, making dinner. Helen had been over and had criticized everything: the cleanliness, the previous day's meal, my haircut. I was tense, stressed. I was chopping onions with the knife Robert had given me, that Japanese one that I liked so much. I remembered that knife. Robert had bought it on a trip to Japan. He had paid a fortune for it because he knew how much Adrienne loved to cook. Michael came home from work in a bad mood. He started complaining that the house smelled too much like onions. I explained that I was cooking. He said I could have ventilated better. I told him the windows were open. And then, for no reason, no real provocation, he said, "You're worthless. You can't even do the simplest thing without messing it up." I turned to look at him, surprised, and he took that as a challenge. Adrienne instinctively touched her jaw, as if the pain was still there. He hit me, a punch straight to the jaw. I fell to the floor. Dad's Japanese knife fell and bent against the tile. Silent tears were streaming down my face. I couldn't hold them back. I stayed there, on the floor of my kitchen, bleeding from my mouth, staring at Dad's broken knife. And all I could think was, "Dad, I need you. I don't know what to do without you." I hugged her tighter. Helen was there. She saw everything. Do you know what she did? What? She knelt beside me and said, "Wives have to learn when to keep their mouths shut. I learned that lesson many years ago. Now it's your turn." After that, Michael locked himself in his study. Helen helped me clean up the blood. She gave me ice for my jaw. She taught me how to put makeup on the bruise. "Yellow corrector first, then your skin tone, then powder." She explained it to me with all the calm in the world, as if it were a normal beauty tutorial. I asked her if she had gone through this, if her husband had ever hit her. She looked me straight in the eyes and said, "No, dear. I was smarter. I learned to control the situation and before it escalated." The pieces were starting to click into place in my head. Helen had not been a victim. Helen had been a perpetrator, and now she was raising a second generation of violence, with Michael as her tool. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, although I knew the answer. "Because I was ashamed, Mum. Because all my life I saw you defending other women. Because you are strong, unbreakable, brave. How could I tell you that I, your daughter, had become exactly the type of woman you rescue? Besides," she continued, "Michael always apologized afterward. He always promised to change, He always convinced me that it had been my fault for provoking him. And part of me was still in love with the man I met 5 years ago. I kept hoping that man would come back. But he wasn't going to come back. No, because that man never existed. He was a mask, and the mask fell off when I was already trapped. We were silent for a long time. The living room clock chimed 3 in the morning. "What's going to happen now?" Adrienne finally asked. "Now," I said with a determination I hadn't felt in years. "Now we are going to make sure Michael and Helen face the consequences of every one of their actions. We are going to use every legal tool we have, and we are going to get your life back." "What if he gets out? What if he comes looking for me?" "He's not going to get out. Not if I can help it. And if he does, he's going to have a restraining order so solid that he won't even be able to think about you without violating the law." Adrienne finally smiled, a small, weak, but genuine smile. "I missed you, Mum. I missed this version of you, the warrior. I never left, honey. I was just asleep for a while, but I woke up." That night, we both fell asleep in her bed, hugging like when she was 5 years old, and storms scared her. But this time, the storm had already passed. Or so we thought, because what we didn't know was that Michael and Helen were not going to give up so easily, and that the real battle was just beginning. I still wonder if I did the right thing by calling the police that night, or if I should have planned more carefully. What about you? What would you have done in my place? The days after the arrest were strange, strangely quiet, strangely peaceful, as if the world had pressed pause. Adrienne stayed with me in Georgetown. We didn't talk much about going back to the Beverly Hills house. Neither of us wanted to face that conversation yet. In the mornings, I made hot apple cider, just like Robert did. Adrienne would sit at the kitchen counter, wrapped in one of my robes, looking out the window at the garden. Sometimes we talked. More often, we stayed in a comfortable silence, the kind of silence that only exists between people who know each other deeply. It was the 4th day after the arrest when the first call came. I was in my study, reviewing documents to prepare the formal case against Michael and Helen, when my phone rang. Unknown number. I usually don't answer unknown numbers, but something made me press the green button. "Attorney Vance?" It was a woman's voice, older, refined, with that tone of authority that comes from years of privilege. "Yes, who is speaking?" "My name is Christine Douglas, of the Rivers family. I'm a close friend of Helen Matthews." Of course she was. "How can I help you?" "Rather, I can help you, attorney. I understand there was a misunderstanding between your daughter and my dear friend Michael." A misunderstanding. She called 3 slaps to the face a misunderstanding. "Ms. Douglas, with all due respect, there was no misunderstanding. There was an act of domestic violence that I witnessed directly, and that is documented by the authorities." "Oh, attorney, please. You are a woman of the world. You know what young marriages are like. There are fights, there are tensions. That doesn't mean you have to destroy the life of a successful man over a moment of..." "A moment of what? Exactly?" I interrupted her. My voice sounded colder than I intended. Silence on the other end. "What I'm trying to say," she continued with a more cautious tone, "is that Helen has told me a lot about her son. He is a good man, hard-working, devoted. And your daughter? Well, Helen mentions that Adrienne can be somewhat challenging." There it was. The narrative I knew was coming. The victim provoked the abuser. The victim deserved it. The victim is the real problem. "Ms. Douglas, I'm going to be very clear. I have no interest in discussing my daughter's character with you or anyone else. My daughter was a victim of violence. Period. and both Michael and Helen are going to face the full legal consequences of their actions. That would be very unfortunate, she said, and now her voice had a threatening undertone. Michael comes from a very well-connected family. His uncle is a magistrate on the Superior Court. His cousin works at the district attorney's office. It would be a shame if this matter became complicated for you and your legal practice. A veiled threat. How predictable. Ms. Douglas, I have been in this profession for 32 years. I have faced threats from drug cartels, corrupt politicians, powerful businessmen. If you think I'm going to back down because Michael's uncle is a magistrate, you clearly don't know who you're talking to. Furthermore, I continued, every word of this conversation is being recorded, as is my legal right, and any attempt at intimidation or interference with an active case constitutes obstruction of justice. Do you wish to continue? She hung up immediately. I sighed and saved the recording in 3 different locations: my phone, my computer, and the cloud. 32 years had taught me to document absolutely everything. Adrienne appeared in the doorway of the study. Who was that? I told her about the call. I watched her face pale. Mum, Christine Douglas is one of the most influential women in the neighborhood. If she's taking Helen's side, it doesn't matter whose side she's on. Justice doesn't work by social connections. But even as I said those words, I knew they weren't entirely true. Justice should work that way. But in reality, connections mattered. Power mattered. Money mattered. And Michael, it seemed, had more connections than I had anticipated. The second call came that same afternoon. This time it was my assistant at the firm, Lucy. She sounded nervous. Attorney, I need to tell you something. A man arrived an hour ago. He said he was Michael Matthews' lawyer. He left this. She sent me a picture via text. It was a lawsuit for defamation, false accusation, and emotional distress. Against me. Against Adrienne. They were asking for $5 million in compensation. He also left something else, Lucy continued. A temporary court order suspending the restraining order against Mr. Matthews, signed by Magistrate Eric Matthews. His uncle, of course. How is this possible? I asked, although I already knew the answer. Favors, calls between friends, the system working for those with the right connections. It's not legal, I said. I'm appealing immediately. Lucy? Yes. Contact Magistrate Jenkins. She owes me a favor. I need her to review this case personally. I'll do it. I hung up and stared at the lawsuit on my phone. $5 million. An amount designed to intimidate, to scare, to make people give up. But I was not just people. Adrienne walked back into the study. She had overheard part of the conversation. Mum, this is getting out of control. Maybe we should… Should what? I looked directly at her. Back down? Let him get away with it. Allow him to continue hitting you because he has a magistrate uncle. No, but $5 million, Mum. That could ruin us. They are not going to win that lawsuit. It's an intimidation tactic, pure and simple. But I saw the fear in Adrienne's eyes, and for the first time, I saw something else. Doubt. Honey, look at me. She did, though with effort. Are you thinking of going back to him? Silence. Adrienne, answer me. I don't know, she whispered. I don't know, Mum. All of this it's too much. The calls, the lawsuits, the threats, and Michael. Michael has been texting me. My blood ran cold for the second time that week. What? He's texting me from his lawyer's phone. Long messages. He says he's sorry, that he's in therapy, that he finally understood what he did wrong, that Helen is also getting psychological help, that if I give him one more chance, he will prove that he can change. Adrienne, I know what you're going to say. I know it's manipulation. I know he's probably lying. But Mum, her eyes filled with tears, what if this time it's true? What if he really is going to change? We were married for 3 years. That has to mean something. I got up from my desk and took my daughter's hands in mine. Do you know how many times I have heard that exact story? How many women have sat exactly where you are now, telling me exactly the same words? But they are not me. You're right. They are not. Because many of them were not lucky enough to have someone to help them get out. Many of them went back. And do you know what happened? Adrienne shook her head, but I think she already knew the answer. Some are in hospitals, some are in wheelchairs, some are in cemeteries. Michael wouldn't kill me. That is exactly what all of them thought. We were silent. I could see the internal battle on my daughter's face. The rational part fighting against the emotional part. The part that knew the truth against the part that still wanted to believe in the fairy tale. Let me show you something, I said. I took her to my home office, opened my computer, and showed her statistics. Cold, hard, undeniable numbers. 70% of women who return to their abuser after the first serious incident suffer more severe violence. 43% end up in the hospital within the first year. And look at this number. I pointed to a figure in red on the screen. 1,200 women died in New York last year from intimate partner violence. 1,200. Every single one of them believed their partner was going to change. Every single one of them thought it was different. Adrienne looked at the screen with glazed eyes. But I also have other numbers, I continued. Women who left, women who reported, women who rebuilt their lives. 87% report a better quality of life 2 years later. 93% say it was the best decision of their lives. And the other 7%? Some cases returned before we could help them completely. Some faced financial difficulties. But none, Adrienne, died. My daughter collapsed onto the couch in my office. You just don't understand, Mum. It's not just physical fear. It's everything. The house we bought together, the plans we had, the friends we made as a couple, the family we were going to build. If I leave him, I lose all of that. No, I said firmly. If you leave him, you gain your life. Everything else is replaceable. Your life is not. But I feel so guilty. Like I'm overreacting, like 3 slaps isn't enough reason to destroy a marriage. And there was the denial, the minimization, the syndrome I had seen in hundreds of cases. Adrienne, look closely at me. 3 slaps. That's 3 slaps too many. There is no acceptable number of times someone can hit you. 0 is the correct number. 0. But what will people think, my friends, my colleagues, his family? Do you care more about what strangers think than your own safety? It's not that. It's just complicated. No, honey. It's simple. He hit you. He is the guilty one. You are the victim. There are no nuances there. Adrienne was quiet for a long moment. Can I at least read the messages? Can I at least hear what he has to say? Every fiber of my being wanted to say no. I wanted to forbid her from having any contact with Michael. But I also knew that if I pressured her too much, I could push her away. Fine, I said carefully, but with conditions. 1, I read the messages with you. 2, you don't reply without consulting me first. 3, we document everything in case we need to use it legally. Deal? She nodded. That night, sitting in her room, Adrienne opened her phone and showed me the messages. There were dozens, all from different numbers. The first one said, "Adrienne, my love, you don't know how sorry I am. I'm destroyed. These days in jail have given me time to think, to really see what I did. I was a monster to you. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I ask for it anyway. Please, give me a chance to show you I can change. I love you more than my own life." Classic. Self-flagellation, followed by declaration of love. The second one. "I talked to a psychologist here. He diagnosed me with impulse control disorder related to childhood trauma. I finally understand where my violence comes from. My mother, she hurt me a lot when I was a kid. I know it's not an excuse, but it's an explanation. I'm working on it. For you. For us." Now he was blaming his mother. Interesting twist, considering Helen had applauded when he hit Adrienne. The third one. "I saw that my lawyer filed a lawsuit against you and your mum. Please believe me, I didn't want that. It was my family's decision. I just want to resolve this privately as a couple. Tell them to withdraw the lawsuit. Just give me a chance to talk to you face to face, without lawyers, without your mum interfering." There it was, the real goal, to isolate her from me, to talk privately, where he could manipulate her without witnesses. "Do you see the pattern?" I asked Adrienne. "Which one?" First message, he plays the victim. Second, he blames others for his behavior. Third, he tries to separate you from your support system. This is the manipulator's manual. Chapter 1. But Mum, what if he really is getting help? What if he really wants to change? If he really wanted to change, he would respect the legal process. He would respect your space. He wouldn't be pressuring you to talk privately. He wouldn't be using lawyers to intimidate us while he writes you love messages. Adrienne knew I was right. I could see it on her face, but I could also see that part of her still wanted to believe the fantasy. The next few days were difficult. Adrienne oscillated between moments of clarity and moments of doubt. Some days she was furious with Michael, determined to move forward. Other days she would stare at her phone for hours, rereading messages, questioning every decision. I tried to give her space while keeping her safe. It was a delicate balance. One afternoon I found her in the garden, standing in front of the small herb patch Robert had cultivated. The rosemary had grown wild. The thyme had spread throughout the planter. The mint threatened to invade everything. "Dad hated seeing the plants neglected," she said, without turning around. I stood beside her. "Your father would want you alive and safe. That's all he would care about." Sometimes I wish he were still here. He always knew what to say. He always knew how to make everything seem simple. Your father was wise, but even he would struggle with this. Not because he wouldn't know the right answer, but because you were his daughter. And when you love someone, you want them to make their own decisions, even when you know they might be the wrong ones. Adrienne turned to look at me. "Do you think I'm making the wrong decision by doubting it?" "I think it's natural to doubt. You were with him for 3 years. You built a life with him. You can't just turn off those feelings like a switch. But what I ask is that you don't confuse the love you felt for him with the danger he now represents." "What's the difference?" "True love makes you feel safe. True love uplifts you, it doesn't destroy you. What Michael offered you wasn't love, it was control disguised as love." Adrienne nodded slowly. "Do you know what the hardest part is?" she asked. "What?" "Accepting that I spent 3 years in love with a lie, that the man I met never existed, that everything was an act designed to trap me. It wasn't your fault, honey. I know it in my head, but my heart still doesn't accept it." I hugged her there, among the overgrown rosemary and invasive thyme, under the same sky Robert used to look up at while cooking barbecue ribs on Sundays. It's going to hurt for a while, I told her, but the pain means you're healing. It means you're alive. That night, Adrienne finally blocked all the numbers Michael had been texting her from. It wasn't easy. She cried while doing it, but she did it. "I'm ready," she said. "I'm ready to fight." "Then we're going to fight." And we did. The next day, I counterattacked legally. I filed a formal appeal against the suspension of the restraining order. I documented every threat, every call, every message. I contacted Magistrate Jenkins, who reviewed the case and confirmed that her colleague's order had been inappropriate. The restraining order was reinstated, with even stricter terms. Michael could not come within 500 yards of Adrienne. He could not contact her directly or indirectly. He could not send third parties to talk to her. Any violation would mean immediate arrest. As I tell all this, I think about where you might be listening. Write the name of your city in the comments. I also filed a counter-lawsuit for aggravated domestic violence, threats, and psychological distress. I asked not for but for $8 million in compensation for Adrienne. Not because we needed the money, but to send a message. They were not going to intimidate us. They were not going to scare us. They were not going to win. But while I fought in the courts, Michael and Helen fought on another battlefield. One I didn't anticipate, one that almost destroyed us. The social war began 3 weeks after the arrest. It was subtle at first, so subtle that I almost didn't notice it. Adrienne had started leaving the house more often, small steps. She went to the grocery store. She went to her hair salon. She was trying to regain some normalcy while we waited for the court hearings. She came back from the salon one afternoon with a pale face. "What happened?" I asked immediately. "Olga," she said. Olga had been her stylist for 5 years, a cheerful woman who always had stories to tell. Olga acted strange, cold, distant. She barely spoke to me throughout the haircut. Maybe she was having a bad day. "No, Mum. It was more than that. When I was paying, another client I know, Fiona, arrived. We've seen each other there dozens of times. We always say hello. But today she saw me and literally turned away. She pretended she was looking for something in her purse until I left." A bad feeling settled in my stomach. "Did you say anything? Did you ask?" I asked Olga if I had done anything wrong. She just shook her head and said she was in a hurry because her next appointment was arriving. But Mum, her appointment book was empty. I saw it. The next day, Adrienne received a text from her best friend from college, Patty, or who had been her best friend. The message said, "Adrienne, I'm sorry, but I think we need to take some time apart. My husband works in the same industry as Michael and says this whole situation is very complicated. I can't afford to be involved. I hope you understand. Wishing you the best." Adrienne showed me the message with trembling hands. Patty and I were roommates for 4 years in college. 4 years, Mum. She was my maid of honor at my wedding. And now she abandons me because her husband says it's complicated. "People are afraid of difficult situations," I said, although the rage was growing in my chest. Especially when power and influence are involved. It's not just Patty. Look. She showed me her Instagram. She had lost almost 100 followers in the last few days. Her last post, a photo of a sunset she had taken from my garden, had only 3 likes. Before, she usually received over 200. I checked the comments on her old posts. Someone had been leaving anonymous messages. "Aren't you ashamed to destroy a good man's life? We all know you provoked the situation and now you're playing the victim. Your mother-in-law told me the truth. You're a manipulator." When did these comments start? About a week ago. I delete them, but they keep reappearing. They come from different accounts every time. It was an organized campaign. I recognized it immediately. I had seen this tactic before in other high-profile cases. Helen, I said, do you think she's behind this? I'm sure of it. And I was right. 2 days later, my assistant Lucy called me urgently. Attorney, you need to see this. She sent me a link to a blog. It was called The Truth Behind the False Accusations. It was anonymous, but professionally designed. The most recent post was titled, The Michael M. Case, When a Corrupt Family Destroys an Innocent Man. I read it with growing horror. The article painted Michael as a loving, successful husband, a victim of a radical feminist lawyer. Me and her manipulative daughter, Adrienne. It said we had made everything up to steal his money, that we had a history of falsely accusing men, that I had been reprimanded for unethical conduct on multiple occasions. Everything was a lie, every single word. But it was written convincingly, with anonymous sources, with confidential documents, with photographs taken out of context. There was a photo of Adrienne at a party, laughing and holding a glass of wine. The caption read, "Does this look like a traumatized woman?" Adrienne fled days after destroying her husband's life. The photo was from 6 months before the hitting, from a work dinner, but without context, it looked like evidence that she was lying. There was another photo of me leaving a courthouse, with a serious expression. The caption, Audrey Vance, known for her aggressive tactics and her hatred of men, has found her next victim in her own son-in-law. This is pure defamation, I told Lucy. I'm going to sue. Is there more? She said, her voice strained. The blog has been shared almost 3,000 times in the last 24 hours. It's in social media groups, on Twitter. There's even a hashtag, Justice for Michael. I felt dizzy. How is this possible? Someone is paying to promote it. Probably bots, fake accounts, paid influencers. This is a professional smear campaign, attorney. I showed the blog to Adrienne. I watched her read it with tears streaming down her face. They're destroying my reputation, she whispered. They're making it look like everything is my fault. What will they think at my job? What will my colleagues think? As if the universe had heard her question, her phone rang. It was her boss at the pharmaceutical company, Dr. Mendez. Adrienne put it on speakerphone. Adrienne, we need to talk, Dr. Mendez said without preamble. Her voice sounded uncomfortable. Certain rumors have reached my ears about your personal situation. Doctor, can I explain? I don't need explanations, but I need you to understand that this company has an image to protect. We cannot afford to be associated with scandal, whether true or false. My blood boiled. Dr. Mendez, I intervened. I am Audrey Vance, Adrienne's mother and her legal representative. What you are suggesting sounds dangerously close to wrongful termination based on her status as a domestic violence victim, which is protected by the Violence Against Women Act. Silence on the other end. I am not firing anyone, the doctor finally said. I am just suggesting that perhaps Adrienne needs to take some time off, a leave of absence, paid, of course, until all this is resolved. How long? Adrienne asked, her voice trembling. Indefinite, for now. She hung up. Adrienne sank onto the couch. They're destroying me, Mom, systematically, my social life, my reputation, now my job. What's next? I didn't have to wait long to find out. That same afternoon, my accountant, Ernie, called me with alarming news. Audrey, we have a problem. Someone filed a complaint with the IRS alleging that you have been evading taxes for years. What? That's absurd. I know. Your records are impeccable, but now you'll have to prove it. They're going to audit your firm, All your cases from the last 5 years, all your accounts. Who filed the complaint? It's anonymous. But Audrey, it came with documents, falsified documents, I'm sure. But very well done. Someone invested time and money in this. Helen, Michael, and their network of influences were attacking from all fronts. How long will the audit take? Months, maybe a year. And in the meantime, your reputation will be under scrutiny. Clients will hesitate. Cases could be delayed. I hung up and looked at Adrienne. They're playing dirty. What are we going to do? The same thing I always do. Fight with the truth. But even as I said those words, I felt the pressure. For the first time in 32 years of my career, I felt real fear. Not for me, but for my daughter, for what this war could do to her. The following days brought more revelations. We discovered that Helen had been organizing meetings with the wives of important men in her social circle. She told them her version of the story, that Adrienne was an unstable woman who had seduced her son for his money. Ironic, considering Adrienne had more money than Michael. That I had manipulated her into filing false charges. That they, as respectable women, should protect their own husbands from false accusations by supporting Michael. It was brilliant, in a twisted sense. Helen had turned the case into a class and gender war, painting herself and her son as victims of a feminist conspiracy, and many women believed her. One afternoon, Adrienne received an Instagram message from an account she didn't know. The message included photos of our Georgetown house, photos taken from the street, photos of the windows, photos of the garden. The message read, "Nice house. It would be a shame if something happened to it." I immediately called Commander Vance. "This is direct intimidation. I need protection." "Attorney, I can put extra patrols on your street, but I don't have resources for 24-hour protection. And if something happens, let's hope it doesn't. In the meantime, document everything. Install security cameras. And be careful." That night, I installed cameras. I reinforced the locks. I bought a new alarm system. And for the first time in years, I slept with my phone next to the bed, ready to call 911 at any moment. Adrienne was in her room, but she wasn't sleeping. I could hear her crying softly through the wall. I got up and went to her room. I found her sitting on her bed, surrounded by old photographs. Photos of her and Patty. Photos of her with her work colleagues. Photos of her wedding. "I was thinking," she said without looking at me, "about how quickly everything can be destroyed. 2 months ago, I had a life. I had friends, a career, a house, a husband. I thought I knew who I was. And now I have nothing. You have me. I know, and I'm grateful. But, Mom, I'm tired. I'm so tired of fighting, of defending myself, of justifying my existence, of proving over and over again that I'm not lying." She turned to look at me, and in her eyes I saw something that terrified me. I saw surrender. "Sometimes I think," she continued, "that it would be easier to just call him, ask for forgiveness, tell him I exaggerated, go back to him. At least then all of this would end." "Adrienne, no." "Why not? Look what's happening. They're destroying us. You, me, everything Dad built. Your firm, your reputation, my career, everything. Is it worth it? Is 3 slaps really worth all of this?" I sat beside her and took her face in my hands, forcing her to look at me. "Listen to me closely. This is exactly what they want. They want you to surrender. They want you to believe that you are the problem. They want you to think that the abuse is preferable to the battle." "But I'm so tired." "I know, my love, I know. But you have to understand something. This darkness you feel now, this exhaustion, this fear, is temporary. But if you go back to him, if you surrender, that will be permanent. Or until he kills you. He wouldn't kill me. You don't know that, and you can't risk your life betting that his violence has limits, because I guarantee you, honey, it does not. Adrienne rested her head on my shoulder, as she did when she was little, and the world seemed too big. How did you do it, Mum? How did you fight for so many women for so many years without getting tired? I got tired. I got tired all the time. But your father reminded me why I was doing it. He used to tell me, Audrey, every woman you save is someone's daughter. She's the daughter we would want someone to save if Adrienne ever needed it. I paused, feeling the weight of the irony. I never thought it would be our own daughter who needed saving. But here we are. And I swear on your father's memory that I am not going to let Michael win. I am not going to let him destroy you, even if I have to fight his entire army of liars. And if we lose? We are not going to lose. But what if we lose? I looked directly into her eyes. Then we will lose knowing that we fought with the truth, that we did not surrender, that we did not allow fear to dictate our decisions. And that, honey, that is a victory in itself. We stayed there, embracing, while outside the city went on with its indifferent rhythm. The next day, I received a call that changed everything. It was Commander Vance. Attorney, I need you to come to the station. Now. What happened? We have new evidence. Evidence that you are going to want to see personally. What kind of evidence? An anonymous package arrived this morning with documents, photographs, and recordings. My heart raced. Recordings of what? Conversations between Michael and his mother, planning exactly how to destroy Adrienne, how to fabricate false evidence, how to use their contacts to ruin her reputation. Where did the package come from? We don't know. It was left at the station entrance during the night. No return address. But attorney, the content is gold. It's exactly what we need to strengthen the case. I'm on my way. I hung up and looked at Adrienne. Get dressed. We have to go to the station. What happened? Someone is helping us. And I think, finally, we are going to see the complete truth. In the car toward the station, my mind worked at full speed. Who had sent that package? Why? Was it someone from Michael's circle who had had enough? Was it someone seeking personal revenge? It didn't matter. What mattered was that finally, we had the missing pieces. And I was about to discover that the truth was much darker than I had imagined. Because what those recordings revealed was not just a plan to destroy us, it was evidence of something much worse. Something that confirmed my worst suspicions about Helen, and something that explained why Michael was exactly the way he was. I still wonder if I did the right thing by moving forward. Sometimes justice has a very high price. What about you? What would you have done in my place? The station's evidence room smelled of old coffee and paper. Commander Vance was waiting for us with a cardboard box on the table. A simple box, unmarked, sealed with ordinary adhesive tape. Nothing special in appearance, but I knew that what it contained could change everything. It arrived at 4 a.m, the commander explained while putting on latex gloves. Security cameras caught a person dropping it off. Medium height, completely covered in a hoodie and cap. Impossible to identify. Fingerprints? I asked. None useful. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. He opened the box slowly. Inside were manila folders, several USB drives, and a large manila envelope. Let's start with this, he said, taking out one of the USB drives and plugging it into a computer. The screen lit up. It was an audio file. The commander pressed play. Helen's voice filled the room. It was unmistakable. that saccharine tone that I had learned to recognize. Don't be naive, Michael. That little girl and her mother are not going to stop. They have to understand who we are, who we've always been. Michael's voice responded. I already sent her the messages like you said. She's doubting, Mum. I can feel it. It's not enough for her to doubt. We need to completely destroy her credibility. I've already hired the public relations team. They are going to handle the blog, the social media, everything. By the weekend, half the city is going to think Adrienne is a calculating liar. And the lawyer? The mother? That one is trickier. She has a solid reputation. But everyone has secrets. I already put my private investigator on it. If he doesn't find anything real, we'll fabricate something. A false complaint to the IRS is already underway. Adrienne covered her mouth with her hand. Tears streamed down her face. The recording continued. Michael, listen closely. This you are experiencing is exactly what I experienced with your father. He also wanted to defy me. He also thought he could control me. And what did you do? A long pause. So long I thought the recording had cut off. What I had to do, what you have to be willing to do if Adrienne doesn't come to her senses. Mom. Don't say Mom in that tone. I raised you. I sacrificed everything for you. After your father, after I had to deal with him, I worked double shifts to give you everything. And now you're going to let a spoiled little girl and her mother destroy what we built? No, of course not. Then listen to the plan. The commander paused the recording. There are 4 more hours, he said. Conversations recorded over the last 3 weeks. All at Helen's house. According to ambient sound analysis, someone planted listening devices there. Who? Adrienne asked, her voice cracking. We don't know, but whoever it was gave us exactly what we needed. He opened one of the folders. It contained photographs. The first was of an official document, a death certificate. Ray Matthews, the commander read. Helen's husband. Died 11 years ago from severe craniocerebral trauma after falling down the stairs of his residence in Chicago. He moved on to the next photo. It was a forensic report. The original report indicated accidental death. But look at this. He pointed to a section highlighted in yellow. The medical examiner who performed the autopsy left marginal notes, notes that never made it into the official report. It says, injury pattern inconsistent with accidental fall. Multiple head contusions suggest repeated blows. Recommend further investigation. Why wasn't it investigated? I asked. Because the case was quickly closed by the prosecutor in charge, a man named Edward Matthews. Another Matthews? Ray's brother, Michael's uncle, the same one who is now a magistrate, and who tried to suspend the restraining order. The pieces clicked into place with terrifying clarity. Helen killed her husband, I said aloud, and the family covered it up. That's what the evidence suggests, the commander confirmed. But there's more. He pulled out another folder. It contained old photographs. One was of a handsome young man, smiling next to a much younger Helen. Ray Matthews in 1990, the commander explained. Successful engineer, came from a well-off family, married Helen when she was 22 and he was 30. He moved on to more photographs. A sequence that showed Ray at different ages. His smile progressively faded. In the last photos, his face showed tension, exhaustion, fear. According to testimonies from neighbors at the time, the marriage was problematic. Helen was extremely controlling. There were reports of yelling, broken objects, but in those years, no one intervened in family matters. And no one thought a woman could be the abuser, I added bitterly. Exactly. The last year of Ray's life, several acquaintances noticed changes in him. He was thinner, more nervous. He confided in a cousin that he wanted a divorce, but that Helen was threatening him. She said that if he left her, she would make sure he never saw his son. And no one did anything? The cousin testified in the original investigation, but his testimony was dismissed as unsubstantiated speculation. And after the case was closed, the cousin received threats. He stopped talking about the subject. Adrienne looked at the photos with horror. "Michael was 7 years old when his father died," she whispered. "He told me he barely remembered him. He said his father was distant, cold, that his mother was the one who really took care of him, protected him." "Helen rewrote the story," I said. "She made Michael believe his father was the bad guy, that she was the victim, the heroine. She raised him with that narrative." The commander nodded. "And now Michael reproduces exactly his mother's patterns. Control, violence, manipulation, but he sees himself as the justified victim." There was another folder. This one was thinner. "This," the commander said with a grave voice, "is the most disturbing." It contained Michael's childhood medical records. Between the ages of 7 and 12, Michael was taken to the emergency room 5 times, 2 broken arms, a fractured rib, multiple contusions. All times, Helen explained that they were accidents, that the boy was clumsy, restless. "She was hitting him," Adrienne said with horror. "Hitting her own son." Social workers opened 2 investigations. Both were closed without action. The family had too much influence. "So Michael not only witnessed violence," I reasoned aloud, "he was a victim of it. Helen molded him from childhood. She taught him that violence is love, that control is care, that victims are guilty." The commander pulled out the last USB drive. "This one," he said, "was recorded 3 days ago. It's the most recent conversation we have." He pressed play. Helen's voice sounded different in this one, more relaxed, almost cheerful. "Everything is going according to plan, son. The blog has had more than 10,000 visits. Social media is working. There are already entire groups on Facebook saying Adrienne is a liar. And the best part is that she is destroying herself, asking for time off work, isolating herself. She's still texting me, Mum, asking if I've contacted her. She blocked all the numbers, but she keeps checking if I'm texting her." "Perfect. That means she's broken. She's doubting. Give me 2 more weeks, and she'll call you herself, begging you to forgive her. And if she doesn't, then we escalate. I have contacts at the newspaper. We can publish a story about false accusations ruining innocent men's lives. Your case as the central example. And the trial? We're going to win the trial. Your uncle is making sure the case goes to the right judge. And if for some reason it doesn't work, we can always appeal. These kinds of cases can last years. By the time it's over, Adrienne is going to be so exhausted that she'll accept any settlement." "And the mother?" "Audrey." Helen's voice hardened. "That's a different problem. She is stubborn. She won't give up easily. But everyone has a breaking point, Michael. Everyone. Your father thought he was invincible too. He thought he could defy me. And look how he ended up." A cold laugh. Silence in the recording. "Mum? You?" "What, me, son? Do you think your mother is capable of doing what is necessary to protect her family? Well, I am. I always have been. And if Audrey Vance doesn't understand that she must back down, she can also have an accident." "You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious. No one threatens my son. No one takes what is ours. I learned it from my own mother, who taught me that weak women are trampled, but strong women do whatever is necessary to survive. Michael, when you have children, you'll understand. You would do anything to protect them. Anything." The recording ended. The silence in the room was absolute. Adrienne was visibly trembling. I hugged her as the weight of what we had just heard settled in all of us. "It's a confession," I said finally. "A confession of murder and a direct threat against me. It's enough to reopen the investigation into Ray Matthews' death," the commander confirmed, "and to add charges of serious threats against Helen." "But is it admissible in court?" I asked. "These recordings were obtained without a warrant, without consent." "Therein lies the problem," the commander admitted. "Technically, no, but we can use them as a basis to obtain legal warrants, to open official investigations, to get testimonies." "And the anonymous package? Who sent it?" "I still don't know, but whoever it is has close access to Helen. They were in her house long enough to plant devices. They know her routine, and they want her to pay." "A family member?" Adrienne suggested. "Possibly. Or an employee. Or someone who was a victim of Helen in the past and finally decided to act." I got up and walked toward the window of the room. Outside, the city continued at its normal pace. People going to work, children walking to school, street vendors setting up their stands, ordinary life. While we were here, discovering that we had been fighting against something much darker than a simple domestic violence case. We had been fighting against generations of violence, against an entire family system built on abuse, control, and cover-up. "What do we do now?" Adrienne asked behind me. I turned to look at her. My daughter, my beautiful, brilliant daughter, who had had the misfortune of falling in love with the product of this horror. "Now," I said, "we use every piece of this evidence. We reopen Ray Matthews' investigation, we file additional charges against Helen, and we make sure Michael understands that he was raised by a murderer." "Do you think that will change anything?" Adrienne asked. "Do you think that if Michael knows the truth about his mother, he will change?" "No," I said honestly. "Probably not, but he deserves to know the truth. And more importantly, he deserves to have the power he has over you taken away." The commander gathered all the folders. "I will initiate formal proceedings today," he said. "But attorney, I need to warn you about something." "What?" "If we attack Helen this way, if we reopen her husband's case, the whole family is going to counterattack. They're going to use every resource they have. It's going to get ugly." "It's already ugly," I replied. "It can't get worse." But I was wrong. It can always get worse. 3 days after receiving the evidence, things escalated in ways I didn't anticipate. First, a summons arrived from the district attorney's office, not for Michael or Helen, but for Adrienne. They were accusing her of filing a false police report. They said they had new evidence that she had fabricated the abuse story, that she had a financial motive for doing so. "How is this possible?" Adrienne asked, reading the document with trembling hands. "Didn't they hear the recordings?" "The recordings are still being officially processed," I explained. "The legal system is slow, and in the meantime, they still have the power to counterattack. The summons demanded that Adrienne appear for questioning in 2 weeks. If she didn't, she could be arrested for contempt." "It's an intimidation tactic," I said. "They want to scare you into withdrawing the charges." "It's working," Adrienne admitted. "I'm terrified. Second, my firm received a visit from IRS auditors. They arrived without warning, with orders to review all my files." Lucy called me in a panic. "Attorney, they're taking computers, documents, everything. They say they have a warrant." "Let them," I said with a calm I didn't feel. "Everything is in order. Let them check whatever they want." But I knew what this meant. Weeks, possibly months, without full access to my files. Cases that would be delayed. Clients who would lose confidence, calculated collateral damage. Third, and this was the most painful, A letter arrived. It was from the American Bar Association. A formal complaint had been filed against me, alleging unethical conduct in Adrienne's case. They said I had a conflict of interest by representing my own daughter, that I had used my personal position to exert undue pressure on the authorities. The letter indicated that there would be a disciplinary hearing. Depending on the outcome, I could face temporary suspension of my license. 32 years of an impeccable career. 32 years defending what was right. And now, for defending my own daughter, my license was at risk. That night I sat in Robert's study, the one we had shared for so many years. His books still on the shelves, his chair still next to the desk. I needed his wisdom, his calm, his perspective. "I don't know if I can do this," I said to the empty space. "I don't know if I'm strong enough." Of course there was no answer, but then I remembered something Robert used to say when I came home after especially difficult days in court. "Audrey, justice doesn't always win, but those who fight for justice never truly lose, because the very act of fighting, of refusing to give up, is already a victory." He was right. He was always right. I got up, wiped away the tears I hadn't noticed were falling, and returned to the living room where Adrienne was sitting, looking at her phone with a lost expression. "Honey," I said, sitting next to her, "I need you to understand something." She looked at me. "We are going to lose the things in this fight. Maybe I will lose my license temporarily. Maybe you will lose some cases at your job. Maybe we will lose friends, reputation, money. Mum, let me finish. We are going to lose things, but there is something we are not going to lose. We are not going to lose your life. We are not going to lose your dignity. We are not going to lose the truth. And when all this is over, when you look back, you will be able to live with yourself, because you will know that you did the right thing, that you did not surrender to fear, that you did not allow a violent man and his murderer mother to dictate your destiny." Adrienne hugged me. "Thank you," she whispered, "for not giving up on me. Never, my love, never." We stayed like that, embracing, while outside the sun set over New York City. Tomorrow would come with new challenges, new battles, new attempts to destroy us. But tonight, in this moment, we were simply a mother and a daughter, supporting each other. And that, I decided, was enough. Because the most important moral revelations was not about Helen or Michael. It was about us, about our strength, about our resistance, about our absolute refusal to be destroyed. They had power, money, connections. But we had something stronger. We had the truth. And the truth, sooner or later, always finds its way to the light, even if it has to pass through all the darkness first. I still wonder if I did the right thing by not giving in to the pressure. Sometimes I wonder if protecting my daughter was worth risking everything I built. What about you? What would you have done in my place? The disciplinary hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning. I put on my most formal suit, the navy blue one Robert had given me for my 10th anniversary as a lawyer. I carefully applied my makeup, covering the dark circles from sleepless nights. I put my hair up in a neat bun. I had to look like what I was, a professional with 3 decades of impeccable experience, not a woman on the verge of collapse. Adrienne wanted to come with me, but I told her to stay home. I didn't need her to see her mother judged for the simple act of protecting her. The Bar Association building was downtown, an old, imposing structure with those columns that are supposed to inspire respect for justice. That morning, it only inspired disgust. The hearing room was on the 3rd floor. When I walked in, there was a panel of 5 lawyers sitting behind a long table. 3 men, 2 women, all older than me, all with carefully neutral expressions. I recognized 2 of them, Mr. Chippy Arthur Bell, a corporate lawyer who had always looked down on those of us who specialized in family cases, and Ms. Patricia Harris, who 30 years ago had been my classmate in law school. We hadn't spoken in a decade. "Attorney Vance," said the panel chairman, a man of nearly 70 named Richard Wells. "Thank you for appearing." As if I had a choice. I sat down in the chair across from them, alone. My lawyer, a colleague who had offered to represent me at no cost, was sitting behind me. But this was my battle. "This hearing," Mr. Wells began, "has been convened to review a complaint filed against you for alleged unethical conduct in the case against Mr. Michael Matthews. Do you understand the charges?" "I understand them," I said in a firm voice, "and I completely reject them. The complaint alleges that you have a conflict of interest in representing your daughter, that you used your personal influence with authorities to expedite an arrest without due investigation, and that you have conducted a defamation campaign against Mr. Matthews and his family." Every word was a carefully constructed lie, but presented with that formal legal language, it sounded almost credible. "Mr. Wells," I said, "my daughter was a victim of domestic violence in my presence. I was a direct witness. There is no conflict of interest in protecting a victim, especially when that victim is your own daughter. In fact, any mother who did not act under those circumstances would be the one who deserved to be questioned." "But as an attorney," Mr. Bell intervened with that condescending tone that so irritated me, "you should have known that the most appropriate course of actions was to recommend your daughter seek independent representation. Your personal involvement compromises objectivity." "Objectivity?" I repeated, feeling the rage rise. "You want to talk about objectivity when my daughter was bleeding on the floor of a dining room? When her husband had just hit her 3 times in front of me?" "Attorney Vance," Mr. Wells said in a warning tone, "maintain a professional demeanor." I took a deep breath. I contained the words I really wanted to say. "My apologies. What I am trying to explain is that I acted within my rights and responsibilities, as a citizen, as a witness, and as a mother. At no time did I violate the ethical rules of our profession." Ms. Harris spoke for the first time. "Audrey," she said, and the use of my first name took me by surprise. "I understand your position, but you must understand that this situation is complicated. Mr. Matthews comes from a respectable family. His uncle is a magistrate, his cousin is a prosecutor. There are considerations." "Considerations?" I interrupted her. "Considerations about what, Patty? About whether a rich, connected man can hit a woman without consequences?" "I'm not saying that." "Then what are you saying?" Uncomfortable silence. Mr. Bell took the floor again. "What Ms. Harris is trying to explain is that your passion for these domestic violence cases, while admirable, can sometimes cloud your judgment. You have built an entire career on being the defender of women, and now, conveniently, your own daughter becomes a case." "Conveniently?" My voice came out louder than I intended. "Are you suggesting that my daughter made up being hit so I could have another case?" "I am suggesting that the situation raises legitimate questions." "The only legitimate questions here," I said, rising from my chair, "are why we are having this hearing in the first place. Who filed the complaint? Who funded it? And what connections do they have to the Matthews family?" "Attorney Vance, sit down," Mr. Wells ordered. I did not sit down. "I have been in this profession for 32 years. I have defended 218 women. I have won 186 cases. I have helped pass 3 victim protection laws. My record speaks for itself. And now," I continued, "for the first time in my career, I face a disciplinary hearing. Not for malpractice, not for negligence, not for dishonesty, but for the unforgivable crime of protecting my own daughter from a violent man. If that is grounds for suspending my license, then suspend it. But let it be clear on the record that this panel chose to side with an abuser over a victim, with power over justice. Attorney Vance, Mr. Wells began, I am not finished. I have evidence, recordings, that prove Helen Matthews, the accused's mother, admitted to murdering her own husband 11 years ago, that she explicitly threatened my life, that she orchestrated a smear campaign against my daughter and me. All of that is being investigated by the relevant authorities, Mr. Wells said. It is not relevant to this hearing. Not relevant? I laughed without humour. It is completely relevant, because it demonstrates that this complaint is part of a pattern of intimidation and manipulation. And you, I looked at each one of them directly, are allowing yourselves to be used. I finally sat down. My heart was beating so hard I could hear it in my ears. The panel exchanged glances. There was an exchange of looks I couldn't decipher. We will take a 30-minute recess, Mr. Wells announced, to deliberate. They left the room. My lawyer immediately came over. Audrey, that was intense. I don't care. They needed to hear it. Yes, but attacking the panel directly, I didn't attack them. I told them the truth. I got up and left for the hallway. I needed air. I needed space. I took out my phone and called Adrienne. Mom, how's it going? Honestly, I don't know. I said what I had to say. Now it's a matter of waiting. Do you think they're going to... I don't know, honey. But if they do, we'll find another way. There's always another way. I love you, Mum. I love you too. I hung up and leaned against the hallway wall. I closed my eyes for a moment. When I opened them, someone was standing in front of me. It was an older man, perhaps 80 years old, with a cane and a suit that had seen better days. Attorney Vance? He asked in a trembling voice. Yes, can I help you? No, I came to help you. I looked at him more closely. There was something familiar about his face, but I couldn't place it. I'm sorry. Do we know each other? Not directly, but I knew Ray Matthews. He was my first cousin. My breathing stopped. I am Albert Matthews, he continued. I was the person who testified in the original investigation into Ray's death, the person who was later threatened into silence. Did you send the package? I asked in a low voice. He nodded slowly. I have lived with that guilt for 11 years. I knew what Helen had done to Ray. I saw him change in those last months. I saw the fear in his eyes. And when he died, I knew it wasn't an accident. Why didn't you say anything? Because I was afraid. Helen threatened me. She told me that if I kept talking, I would have the same accident as Ray. And I was a coward. I let her get away with it. His eyes filled with tears. But when I saw what she was doing to that girl, to your daughter, I couldn't stay silent anymore. I hired a private investigator. I planted listening devices in Helen's house when I went over for a family dinner. I recorded everything for 3 weeks. Why anonymously? Because I'm still afraid. Because I have grandchildren. Because the Matthews family has power. But at least now the truth is out there. At least now there's a chance for Helen to pay. I looked at this old man, shaking with his cane, who had found the courage to do the right thing after 11 years. Thank you, I said simply. Thank you for giving Ray a voice after so long. It was the least I could do. He was a good man. He didn't deserve what happened to him. Would you be willing to testify? Officially? He hesitated. If they guarantee me protection, then yes. It's time for this to end. It's time for Ray to have justice. I gave him my card. I promised him that Commander Vance would contact him to arrange protection. When he left, limping with his cane down the hallway, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. The 30 minutes turned into an hour, then 2. Finally, I was called back into the room. The 5 panel members were seated again. Their expressions were illegible. Mr. Wells spoke. Attorney Vance, this panel has carefully reviewed the evidence presented, the allegations against you, and your defense arguments. We have decided to temporarily suspend this hearing. What? I couldn't contain my surprise. Given the new revelations regarding the Matthews case and the evidence being processed by criminal authorities, we deem it premature to issue a judgment on your professional conduct at this time. The hearing will be postponed indefinitely, pending the resolution of the criminal case. Your license will remain active during this time. It wasn't a victory, but it wasn't a defeat either. It was a postponement, a temporary truce. However, Mr. Wells continued, it must be clear that if it is determined at any point that you acted unethically, this hearing will be resumed. I understand, I said. You may leave. I got up. I didn't say anything else. There was nothing more to say. When I left the building, the sun was at its highest point. It was hot. The city was bustling with normal life. I called Adrienne immediately. They didn't suspend me, I said as soon as she answered. They postponed the decision. Is that good? It's the best we could hope for today. I'll make coffee when you get home. The apple cider kind, the way Dad liked it. Perfect, honey. Perfect. But as I drove back to Georgetown, I didn't feel relieved. I felt exhausted. Exhausted from fighting. Exhausted from defending ourselves. Exhausted from having to justify every action, every decision, every word. I arrived home and found Adrienne in the kitchen, as promised. The smell of hot apple cider, cinnamon and brown sugar filled the house. It reminded me of Robert. It reminded me of quiet Sundays. It reminded me of a life that no longer existed. Mum, Adrienne said, serving me a cup. Are you all right? Yes, I lied. Just tired. There's something I need to tell you. Something in her tone put me on alert. What happened? I got a call from the pharmaceutical company. My stomach sank. They officially fired me. They said my indefinite leave has turned into contract termination, by mutual agreement, according to them, to avoid scandal. Adrienne. It's not your fault, Mum. It's just that I'm losing everything. My career, my friends, my reputation. Everything I worked for 10 years is crumbling. I watched her sit on the kitchen counter with that same defeated posture I had seen in hundreds of victims throughout my career. And I realized something terrible. We were losing. Not legally, not yet. But we were losing the war of attrition. Helen and Michael didn't need to win in court. They just needed to slowly destroy us, take away everything that mattered until there was nothing left to fight for. It was a brilliant strategy in its cruelty, and it was working. That night, while Adrienne slept, I sat in Robert's study again. I don't know how much longer we can resist, I said to his photograph on the desk. We are losing everything, and I don't even know if it will be worth it in the end. Of course, there was no answer. But then my phone rang. It was Commander Vance. Attorney, I need you to come to the station. First thing tomorrow morning. It's urgent. What happened? Michael Matthews. He violated the restraining order. He was arrested 2 hours ago. My heart raced. What did he do? He went to the Beverly Hills house, the house he shared with Adrienne. Apparently, he didn't know that we had installed surveillance after the threats. The cameras caught everything. Caught what? The commander paused. They caught him destroying the house, breaking windows, trashing furniture, and writing messages on the walls. What kind of messages? Threats. Very specific threats against Adrienne and against you. I closed my eyes. Where is he now? In custody. This time he won't get out easily, not with violation of a restraining order, destruction of property, and threats documented on video. I'll be there first thing in the morning. I hung up and stared into the darkness outside the window. Michael had lost control. He had crossed the line so obviously that not even his family could protect him this time. It was a victory. But I didn't feel victorious. I felt hollow, because I knew this wasn't over, that Helen was still out there, free, dangerous, and that as long as she existed, neither of us would truly be safe. The Beverly Hills house looked like a war zone. We arrived early in the morning, Adrienne and I, escorted by Commander Vance. The police had cordoned off the area. Neighbors peered from their windows, some taking photos with their phones. The scandal Michael so feared creating, he had finally created himself. The front door was splintered, as if it had been kicked repeatedly. When we walked in, the smell of spray paint hit me immediately. The walls were covered with words. "Liar, whore, I'm going to kill you, this isn't over," written in red spray paint, like blood. Adrienne covered her mouth, holding back a sob. The furniture was destroyed. The sofa she had chosen so carefully, slashed with something sharp. The dining room table, where that fatal dinner had taken place, overturned. The fine porcelain dishes that had been my mother's, shattered on the floor, and in the kitchen, we found the worst. The Japanese knife Robert had given Adrienne, the one that had been damaged that first time Michael hit her, was now stuck in the wooden counter. Next to it, a handwritten note, "For when you return." The implications were clear and terrifying. "Everything is documented," Commander Vance said, showing me his tablet with the security footage. "He arrived at 11:30 at night. He spent 3 hours here, systematically destroying every room. In the video, you can see Michael moving as if possessed, yelling, crying, breaking things. At times, he was talking to himself, as if having a conversation with someone who wasn't there." "Is he under the influence of something?" I asked. "Toxicology analysis are pending, but his behavior suggests a psychotic episode, or just uncontrolled rage." Adrienne walked through the house as if in a trance, touching the remnants of her former life. "I bought that lamp in Santa Fe," she murmured, looking at the ceramic pieces on the floor. "On our first anniversary, I thought we would grow old together in this house." She knelt beside the fragments, touching them carefully, as if they were sacred relics of a life that no longer existed. "Adrienne," I said softly, kneeling beside her, "this is not your life. This was an illusion. Your real life is waiting for you. A life without fear, without violence, without having to measure every word." "But Mum, look at this. Look what my marriage turned into. Walls with threats, destroyed furniture. How did we get here?" "Because you married a sick man, raised by a sick woman. It's not your fault." "But I chose him. I said yes. I ignored all the signs." "Because he fooled you. Because that's what abusers do. They present themselves as Prince Charming until the trap closes." I helped her up, her knees trembling. "Do you want to take anything?" I asked. "Anything you want to keep?" She looked around. The shattered living room, the ruined dining room, the kitchen stained with hatred. "No," she finally said. "I don't want anything from here. This house is cursed with his violence, with his rage. Let it rot." It was the first time I had heard genuine clarity in her voice since all this began. But there is something I need to do, she continued. What? I need to see him. Michael? Yes, I need to look him in the eyes one last time. I need to tell him what I never could when we were together. Commander Vance listened to us. I can arrange it, he said. He's in custody. He's technically still entitled to visits from his wife. But, attorney, he looked directly at me. Are you sure this is a good idea? No, I admitted. I'm not sure, but it is Adrienne's decision. We looked at my daughter. I'm sure, she said firmly. I need to do this. For me. 2 hours later, we were in the jail's visitation room. Adrienne had changed her clothes, putting on a simple but elegant dress. She had put on light makeup. She looked beautiful, strong, nothing like the broken woman Michael expected to find. I was sitting outside, watching through the glass of a door. Commander Vance was by my side, along with 2 security guards. If he makes any threatening moves, the commander assured me, we'll go in immediately. I nodded. Michael entered the room in handcuffs. He had lost weight. He had deep dark circles under his eyes. His jail uniform was too big for him. He no longer looked like the successful, well-dressed engineer I had met 5 years ago. He looked like what he was, a man destroyed by his own violence. When he saw Adrienne, his face went through a sequence of emotions: surprise, relief, hope. Adrienne, he said, his voice breaking. You came. I knew you would come. I knew you still love me. Adrienne didn't answer immediately, just looked at him with an expression I couldn't decipher. Sit down, Michael, she finally said. He obeyed, sitting across from her with his handcuffed hands on the table. I made a mistake, he began immediately. A terrible mistake last night. I don't know what came over me. It was like something broke inside of me. But I can fix it. We can fix everything. If you just forgive me. I didn't come here to forgive you, Adrienne interrupted him. The silence that followed was absolute. What? I didn't come here to forgive you, Michael. I came to tell you the truth I should have told you 3 years ago. Adrienne, please, no. It's my turn to talk now. For the first time in our marriage, you are going to listen to me without interrupting, without yelling, without hitting. Michael closed his mouth. Something in Adrienne's tone must have told him that this time was different. When I met you, she continued, I thought you were everything I had ever dreamed of. Smart, successful, charming. My friends envied me, my family admired you. I thought I had won the lottery. But little by little, so gradually that I barely noticed, you started changing me, molding me into something that wasn't me. You criticized my clothes, questioned my friendships, controlled my time, and I allowed it because I thought that was love. I thought your jealousy meant you cared. Adrienne, everything I did was because I loved you. No, she said firmly. What you felt wasn't love, it was possession. I wasn't your wife, I was your property, something you thought you could control, manipulate, punish when it didn't obey. Michael shook his head, tears beginning to fall. No, it's not like that. I love you. I have always loved you. Did you love me when you hit me for spilling a drop of water? Did you love me when you locked me in our room because I came home late from work? Did you love me when you destroyed the house we bought together and wrote death threats on the walls? Every question was a stab. Michael flinched with each one. Your mother taught you that this is how you love, Adrienne continued, because that's how she loved your father, with control, with violence, with the belief that she had rights over his life. Don't bring my mother into this. Your mother murdered your father, Michael. She killed him and made you believe it was an accident. She raised you with that lie. She taught you that violence was normal, that control was affection, that victims were guilty. That's a lie, Michael screamed, rising from his chair. The guards tensed, ready to intervene. Sit down, Adrienne ordered with supernatural calm, and to my surprise, Michael obeyed. We have recordings, Adrienne said, of your mother admitting what she did, threatening to do the same thing to me, with you right there, listening, supporting her. She wasn't serious. Yes, she was serious. And deep down you know it. You have always known it. That's why you never questioned the accident story. That's why you never really investigated how your father died. Michael fell apart, literally bending over the table, sobbing. I don't know who I am without her, he admitted through tears. I don't know how to be. She is all I have. And that, Adrienne said, is precisely the tragedy, because you could have been different. You could have chosen to be the man you pretended to be when we met, but you chose to be like her. What am I going to do? Michael asked, his voice that of a lost child. What's going to become of me? I don't know. And honestly, Michael, it's not my problem anymore. Adrienne stood up. I came here for one reason, to tell you that I am no longer afraid of you, that I no longer blame myself for what you did to me, that I understand that you were both a victim and a perpetrator. But that does not excuse what you did. I came to tell you that I am starting divorce proceedings, that I am going to get my house back, my money, my life, and that never, ever again will you have power over me. Adrienne, please don't go. Goodbye, Michael. I hope that someday, in some prison cell, you find the real therapy you need. Not for me, but for you, and for any woman who has the misfortune of crossing your path in the future. She turned and walked toward the door. Adrienne, Michael screamed. Adrienne, I love you. I will always love you. She stopped at the door without turning around. Love doesn't hurt, Michael. What you felt was never love. And she left. When the door closed behind her, I saw her transform. The shoulders she had kept tense throughout the conversation finally relaxed. The tears she had been holding back finally fell. But they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of liberation. I hugged her in the hallway, while Michael continued screaming her name from the visitation room. Is it over? I whispered. Is it done? Yes, she replied. It's done. That night, back at the Georgetown house, Adrienne walked into Robert's study, the same one where I had spent so many nights seeking his silent counsel. I found her there, looking at his photograph on the desk. Do you know what the strangest thing is? She said without looking at me. During all these months, I thought Dad would be disappointed in me, for marrying Michael, for not seeing the signs, for needing to be rescued. Your father would never have been disappointed in you. I know it now, because Dad taught me what real love was. He showed me what a marriage should be like. Mutual respect, unconditional support, constant kindness. That's why I knew something was wrong with Michael, she continued, because Dad set the standard, and Michael never came close to meeting it. She turned to me. Thank you, Mum, for not giving up, for fighting when I couldn't, for being strong when I was broken. Always, honey, always. We hugged in that study that smelled of old books and coffee, surrounded by the memories of a man who had taught us what it meant to love correctly. The next day, we formally began the divorce proceedings. We also filed additional charges for destruction of property and threats. With the security footage, it was an open and shut case. Michael now faced multiple charges: domestic violence, violation of a restraining order, destruction of property, threats. His family's lawyers tried to negotiate, but this time there was no room for negotiation. The evidence was too clear, the crimes too obvious, but Helen remained. She was still free, awaiting trial for her role as an accomplice in the violence against Adrienne. But now, with Albert Matthews' testimony and the recordings confessing Ray's murder, the prosecutor's office was reopening that investigation too. One afternoon, a week after the confrontation with Michael, I received an unexpected call. It was Helen. "Attorney Vance," she said with that voice I had learned to hate. "We need to talk." "We have nothing to talk about." "On the contrary, we have a lot to talk about. My freedom, my son's future, and what I am willing to do to protect both." "Are you threatening me?" "No, dear. I am offering you a deal." "I don't make deals with murderers." "How dramatic. Listen, I know you have recordings. I know that traitor Albert sold me out. But I also know that those recordings are not admissible in court. They were illegally obtained. They may not be directly admissible, but they provide the basis for a full investigation. And when that investigation is finished, you will spend the rest of your life in prison. Maybe or maybe not. My family has resources, good lawyers, connections. We can prolong this for years, decades. What is your point? My point is that we are both tired. You, your daughter, me, my son. We have all lost something in this war. Wouldn't it be better for everyone if we just ended this? How? You withdraw the charges against Michael. You convince Adrienne to accept an amicable divorce without compensation. And I will make sure the investigation into Ray stalls. Everyone moves on with their lives. Are you crazy? Do you think I'm going to let your son escape without consequences? Not without consequences. With reduced consequences. 1 year in prison instead of 6. Mandatory therapy. Permanent restraining order. Something that allows him to rebuild his life eventually. He hit my daughter. He threatened her life. He destroyed her property. And you have destroyed her life, her reputation, her career. Isn't that enough? For a moment, just one moment, I considered the proposal. Not because I thought it was fair, but because I was tired, so profoundly tired of fighting. But then I remembered Adrienne's words in the visitation room. Love doesn't hurt. And I knew my answer. No, I said firmly. There is no deal. You and Michael are going to face full justice. No shortcuts, no negotiations, no family protection. That is a mistake, attorney. No. Accepting your offer would be the mistake, because it would send the message that money and connections can buy impunity. And I have dedicated my life to proving the opposite. You will regret this. I doubt it. But Helen, there is something I want you to know. What? Ray is going to have justice. Finally, after 11 years, his death is going to be properly investigated. His name will be cleared. And you are going to face what you did to him. You can't prove anything. I have your confession on audio. I have Albert's testimony. I have the original forensic reports with the doctor's notes. And I have something else. What? I have time. All the time in the world to make sure you pay. I hung up before she could respond. That night, sitting in the garden of the house, looking at the stars, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not because everything was resolved. The trial was still pending. There were still battles to be fought. But because finally, we had taken control of the narrative. We were no longer victims fleeing danger. We were warriors choosing our battlefield. And in that choice, in that silent shift from fear to action, we found our true strength. Adrienne came out to the garden and sat next to me. What are you thinking about? She asked. Your father. about how proud he would be of you. Of me? Why? Because you confronted your abuser. You told him the truth. You freed yourself. That requires a courage that most people never find. I learned it from you. No, you had it inside you all along. I just helped you remember it. We stayed there, mother and daughter, under the night sky of New York City. We had lost a lot in this war. Friends, reputations, time, innocence. But we had gained something more valuable. We had gained our dignity. And that, we decided that night, was enough. The trial of Michael lasted 3 weeks. I was present every day. Adrienne, too. At first with fear, but firmer every day. The defense tried everything. They pleaded temporary mental disorder. They argued that Adrienne had provoked him. They presented witnesses who said my daughter was manipulative. But the evidence was irrefutable. The security footage, the medical reports, the photographs of the destroyed house, and my testimony as a direct witness to that dinner. The jury deliberated 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. 5 years in prison. Permanent restraining order. Mandatory psychological therapy. When the verdict was read, Michael did not cry. He just looked at Adrienne with an empty expression, as if he finally understood that he had lost forever. Helen, sitting in the gallery, did cry. But they were not tears of remorse. They were tears of impotent rage. Her trial came 2 months later. The reopening of the investigation into Ray Matthews' death had revealed more than we expected. Testimonies from neighbors who were never heard. Medical records that demonstrated a pattern of injuries on Ray. Financial records that showed how Helen had taken total control of her husband's accounts months before his death. And the recordings. Those darn recordings where she confessed everything. Helen's lawyers fought hard. They argued that the recordings were inadmissible, that Albert's testimony was prejudiced, that there was no physical evidence after 11 years. But the judge, a woman of 60 years old, with a reputation for being inflexible in violence cases, allowed much of the evidence to be presented. The trial lasted 5 weeks. It was exhausting, painful. Every day revealed new layers of Helen's darkness. The final verdict, guilty of felony battery in the case of Adrienne, guilty of obstruction of justice for the cover-up of Ray's death. 12 years in prison. When the judge read the sentence, Helen finally lost her composure. She screamed. She called the judge corrupt. She pointed at me and yelled that I had destroyed her family. "You destroyed your own family," I replied calmly. "I just made sure you paid for it." They took her out of the room in handcuffs, still screaming threats. But in her eyes, I saw something I hadn't seen before. Fear. Real fear of what awaited her. 12 years in prison for a 64-year-old woman meant she would probably die there. And for the first time in this nightmare, I didn't feel satisfaction, only sadness for all the pain this woman had caused, for the lives she had destroyed, including that of her own son. 6 months after the trial, Adrienne received a letter. It was from Michael, from prison. She hesitated to open it. We sat in the kitchen for half an hour, looking at the closed envelope. "Do you want me to open it?" I offered. "No, I need to do it." She opened it with trembling hands. The letter was short, handwritten with shaky handwriting. "Adrienne, I don't expect you to read this. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed to write these words, even if they never reach you. I am in therapy, real therapy, this time. I have started to understand what my mother did to me, what I did to you, the cycle of violence that I repeated without even realizing it. My therapist asked me last week if I was ever truly happy in our marriage. It took me days to realize that the answer is no, because it wasn't happiness I felt. It was control. And when I lost that control, I was so terrified that I responded with violence. I know I will spend years here. I deserve it. But I want you to know something. You were right. About everything. My mother killed my father. I knew it always, on some deep level that I never wanted to acknowledge, and I chose to become her because it was easier than facing the truth. I am not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just ask you to live, to be happy, to find the love I could never give you. And if you ever have a daughter, teach her what I never learned. That love does not control. It does not hit. It does not destroy. Love liberates. Michael. Adrienne finished reading with tears falling onto the paper. Do you think he's sincere? She asked. I think he's beginning to see the truth. If that will turn into real change, only time will tell. Should I answer? Do you want to? She thought for a long moment. No, because anything I say to him would make it about him, about his redemption, about his process, and I am no longer part of his story. She folded the letter carefully and put it away in a drawer. But I'm going to keep it as a reminder that even monsters of Chinsom are human, sick, broken, but human. That same month we received news about the Matthews family. Magistrate Edward Matthews, Michael's uncle, resigned from his position after an internal investigation revealed that he had inappropriately used his influence in multiple cases, not just ours. The prosecutor cousin also faced charges for obstruction of justice. The family that had seemed so powerful, so untouchable, was crumbling. Not because of our direct actions, but because finally someone had shone a light on their shadows. And roaches always run when the light is turned on. Christine Douglas, Helen's friend who had called to intimidate me at the beginning, posted a public apology on her Facebook. She said she had been misled, that she didn't know the full truth, that she supported victims of violence. It was a lie, of course. She was just trying to save her reputation, but I ignored her. She was no longer worth my energy. Adrienne sold the Beverly Hills house. She couldn't bear the idea of going back there, and I completely understood. With the money, plus the compensation the judge ordered Michael to pay, she bought a small but bright apartment in Brooklyn. A new place, without memories, without ghosts. I helped her decorate it. New furniture, bright colors, plants in every window. It's mine, she said the day she moved in. Completely mine. No one can destroy it. No one can take it away from me. Exactly. But the true karmic justice came unexpectedly. 1 year after Helen went to prison, I received a call from the warden. Helen had suffered a stroke. She survived, but was partially paralyzed. She needed constant assistance for the most basic activities. The woman who had controlled everything, who had exerted absolute power over her family, now depended completely on others to eat, dress, move. Is it terrible that I don't feel sorry? Adrienne asked me when I told her. No, it's human. She never felt sorry for her victims, but I don't feel happy about her suffering either. That, I said, is what makes you different from her. That is what makes you better. Life, we discovered, has a poetic way of collecting its debts. Michael, the man who used his strength to control, now lived in a cell where he had no control over anything. Helen, the woman who had taken Ray's mobility and life, had now lost her own mobility. And we, the ones who had been pushed, hit, threatened, now walked free. It wasn't revenge, it was balance. The universe, finally, finding its midpoint. 2 years after the arrest, Adrienne got a new job at a smaller company, but with a boss who valued her talent and respected her boundaries. She started going out with her friends again. Some of the old ones came back, apologizing for abandoning her. Adrienne forgave them, but kept her distance. She had learned who her true allies were. She even started dating someone new, a doctor she met at a conference, gentle, patient, with no need to control her. "He's so different, ain't it, Mum?" she told me one afternoon while we were having coffee in her apartment. "He asks my opinion. He respects when I say no. He encourages me to spend time with my friends. It's so strange that it's normal. That's how it should always be. I know it now, thanks to you, and thanks to Dad, for showing me what real love looks like." As for me, my license was never suspended. The disciplinary hearing was officially closed without action. My firm survived the IRS audit without problems. And more importantly, I received calls from 5 different women saying that my case with Adrienne had given them the courage to report their own abusers. "I saw how you fought for your daughter," one of them told me. And I thought, if a successful lawyer wasn't ashamed to admit her daughter was a victim, then I shouldn't be either. That was my true payment. Not money, not public recognition, but knowing that our nightmare had illuminated the path for others. One afternoon, 3 years after that fatal dinner, Adrienne and I visited Robert's grave. We brought fresh flowers, cleaned the headstone, and sat on the grass next to it. "Hi, Dad," Adrienne said. "I'm sorry I haven't visited in a while. I've been busy rebuilding my life. I want you to know that I'm fine. Finally, really fine. I have a job I love. I have true friends, and I met someone. Someone who treats me like you treated Mum, with respect, with kindness. And Mum," she continued, "Mum was exactly who you always said she was. A warrior, my hero." I silently wiped away tears. "We miss you," Adrienne said. "We miss you every day, but I think you would be proud of us, of how we survived, of how we fought." The wind blew softly, rustling the leaves of the nearby trees. And for a moment, just a moment, I could have sworn I heard Robert's laugh. His laugh that said, "Of course I'm proud. I always have been." We left the cemetery hand in hand, mother and daughter, walking toward the future. A future without fear, without violence, without having to look over our shoulders. Justice had been served. Not perfect, because human justice never is, but enough. And karma, that cosmic balance that we work so hard to believe in, had done its part. Those who caused pain now lived in pain, and those who suffered now walked free. That's how the universe works. We discovered, slow, imperfect, but inevitable. The truth always finds its way, and justice, though late, always arrives. Today marks 5 years since that dinner. 5 years since my blood ran cold upon hearing applause celebrating violence against my daughter. 5 years since I dialed that number and changed the course of our lives forever. I am sitting in my garden, the same one where Robert cultivated his herbs. The rosemary was finally pruned. The thyme is under control. The plants he loved now grow ordered, healthy, revived, like us. Adrienne comes to visit me every Sunday, no longer for barbecue ribs, although sometimes I prepare them in Robert's honor. She comes simply because she wants to, because our relationship is no longer marked by trauma, but by the love that was always there. Today she brought someone with her. "Mum," she says with a smile that lights up the entire garden, "I'd like you to meet Daniel, the doctor she met 2 years ago. The gentle man who treats her the way she always deserved to be treated. I watch him carefully as he greets me, the way he looks at Adrienne, the way he waits for her to speak first, the way he maintains a respectful distance until she invites him closer. I see respect. I see patience. I see real love." It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Vance, he says with genuine sincerity. Adrienne has told me so much about you, about everything you did for her. I only did what any mother would do. No, Adrienne says, taking my hand. Not any mother. Many mothers look the other way. Many mothers choose to believe the lies because the truth is too painful. But not you. You never looked the other way. We have lunch together in the garden. Light conversation, genuine laughter. Daniel tells stories from his work at the hospital. Adrienne talks about her new project at the pharmaceutical company, one that could help make medicines more accessible in rural communities. I'm returning to my purpose, she tells me, to doing science that matters, that helps. Your father would be so proud. I know. I feel like he's watching me, that they are both watching us. After lunch, Daniel kindly offers to wash the dishes. Adrienne and I stay in the garden, alone for a moment. Is it serious? I ask. Yes, she replies with a shy smile. Very serious. Mum, he asked me to marry him. My heart leaps, not with fear this time, but with hope. And what did you say? I said I needed time, not because I have doubts about him, but because I need to make sure I'm ready, that I've healed enough. That, I say, is exactly the right answer. It shows that you've learned, that you know your worth. I also told him that before I could say yes, he needed to know my whole story, the violence, the trial, everything. I don't want secrets in this relationship. And how did he react? He hugged me, told me that nothing in my past changes how he feels about me, that he admires my strength, that he would be honored to spend his life showing me how a woman should be treated. My eyes fill with tears. Then you have my blessing when you're ready. Thank you, Mom, for everything, for never giving up on me, for showing me I deserved something better, for saving my life. You saved your own life, honey. I just gave you the tools. We are silent for a moment, listening to the wind in the trees, the chirping of birds, the ordinary life we almost lost. Do you know what I've been thinking lately? Adrienne says. What? About all the women who weren't as lucky as I was, the ones who don't have a lawyer mother, the ones who don't have resources, the ones who are trapped with no visible way out. I think about them all the time. I've been considering something. I want to use my story, publicly, to help others. I look at her, surprised. Are you sure? That means exposing yourself, reliving the trauma. I know. But, Mum, if my story can help a single woman recognize the signs, have the courage to report, know that there is life after abuse, then it's worth it. My daughter, my beautiful, brave daughter. Then we will do it together. I will support you every step of the way. Daniel comes out of the kitchen, drying his hands. Am I interrupting something important? No, Adrienne says, standing up. We were just finishing. Ready to go? Whenever you are ready. They say goodbye. I watch them walk away, hand in hand, toward his car. And for the first time in 5 years, I feel complete peace because my daughter not only survived, she flourished. That night, alone at home, I open my laptop. I have been writing these memoirs for months. The complete story, every detail, not for me, but for the others. For the women sitting at family dinners, feeling that something is wrong, but unable to name it. For the ones who receive the first blow and wonder if they are overreacting. For the ones who love their abusers and hate themselves for it. For the mothers who suspect but are afraid to ask. I write the last line. If my story helps a single woman open her eyes, it will have been worth it. Every tear, every battle, every sleepless night. Because in the end, it is not about revenge, it is about justice. And justice begins when someone, somewhere says, no more. I said no more that night in that dining room. When will you say it? I close the laptop. Tomorrow I will send it to be published. Tomorrow another battle will begin, this time to change hearts and minds. But tonight, I allow myself to simply be a 62-year-old woman. Mother, lawyer, widow, survivor. I pour myself a cup of hot apple cider, the last one Robert taught me to make, and I toast silently to my husband, who taught me what true love was, to my daughter, who found her strength in the darkness, to all the women who came before us, paving paths, and to all those who will come after, walking the paths we helped create. Violence did not win, fear did not win, corrupt power did not win. We won. Two women who refused to be silenced, who refused to be destroyed, who refused to accept that violence was their destiny. And in that refusal, in that resistance, we found something more precious than any legal victory. We found our voice, our dignity, our freedom. If you are listening to this and recognize your story in mine, I want you to know something. You are not alone. You are not crazy. It is not your fault. And yes, there is a way out. Maybe you can't see it now. Maybe you feel trapped. Maybe you love the person who hurts you and that confuses you. All of that is normal. But listen closely to me. You deserve love that doesn't hurt. You deserve respect that is unconditional. You deserve to live without fear. And when you are ready, when you finally say, no more, there will be people there to help you. Lawyers, counselors, shelters, families, friends. You may lose things along the way. I lost friendships, reputation, years of peace. But I gained something more important. I gained my daughter back, and she gained her life. So thank you for listening to me until the end. Thank you for allowing me to share this story that I kept for too long. If this story touched your heart, subscribe and activate the little bell to hear more stories of women who transformed their pain into wisdom. Every day, a woman, a life lesson. Share this story with someone you love. Sometimes a story like this can change an entire day. It can change an entire life. God bless you. And remember, true love never hurts. Never. Until next time, sincerely, Audrey Vance, a mother who saved her daughter and a daughter who saved her own life.